get your feedback. When I release the results, you're not going to just see your result, you're also going to see on your original assignment where you got marks. Some of you will have 2 people that marked it. That means that yours have been selected for moderation. And you'll see your result. You'll see exactly where your marks were allocated. And because I'm going to post this recording as well as the slides that we are going to deal with now on Canvas, when class finished today, you can then also compare with your own work, what you have it to see where you got your marks and where you lost your marks. Okay. Feedback is going to not be individual specific feedback on your assessment, on your assignment. Is going to be, my apologies, is going to be in general and from mistakes I've picked up. Individual feedback, once you've received your results and your original assignment, you can individually address that to me. Right. Question 1. In question 1, we said basically that I've tried my best. I've tried my ginger tea and everything now, but I just cannot shrug this cough. Anyway, let's resume. And hopefully there won't be any further interruptions through my very irritating cough. Remax real estate company. This specific one is based in Somerset West. The reason why I've chosen this one for the case study was because Somerset West is one of the fastest growing property areas, both commercially and residentially, and even industrially in South Africa, and definitely in the Western Cape. And therefore, obviously, if you're into selling houses, selling or renting offices, industrial space or factories, vacant land for the development of commercial, residential, industrial properties, that should be a good area to work in. Okay, that's the background. Remax is not a South African company. Remax is an American company that has offices in more than 100 countries, and obviously more than one office in South Africa. We chose the one in the Western Cape in Somerset West. For those people who are not from Somerset West, who are up country, that is about 50 kilometers from Cape Town, also on the coastline. Very popular area for people to, because it's about 20 km from Stellenbosch. A lot of people who can't afford property in Stellenbosch stay in Somerset West. A lot of people working in Stellenbosch stay in Somerset West. So it's a very popular area, and also it's walking distance. In most cases, 5-minute driving distance from the beach in False Bay. If you do like the big whites, regardless if you're surfing or not, if you're just in awe with what they do, this would be a great spot too, because they are usually rather active in summertime in the rather pleasant hot water of the False Bay. Question 1, with that in the back of our minds, 10 steps in the selling cycle. You had to name them. That's 1 mark. And explain. You can't just say prospecting. In some cases, no. I think in most cases, I was very reasonable, and if you gave it to me, I did give you the mark. But this is part of the feedback that is very important for those of you who consider further studies, not just at Stadio, but at other institutions. Second and third years becomes tougher. When it says list and explain, you can't just name them. If you don't explain them, you're getting no marks. So you have to preferably provide me with the 10 steps and tell me what each of the steps are about. I would say 90% of the students got the spot on. And in some cases, students were not 100% on the ball with one or two of the steps, or actually what these particular steps meant. In the second question, part of question 1, we wanted you to apply this to Remax. In other words, you are selling houses for them. Now, when you're selling houses, where do you start prospecting? I already told you now that the potential market of people who might want to live in Somerset West are people who retire because there's good golf courses, there's retirement golf estates, retirement villages. There are a lot of younger people who work in Cape Town, 50 km away, or work in Stellenbosch, which is basically 20 km away. Those are two potential markets already. There are people who maybe want to enter the market and later on then resell and move to an area closer to where they are. There are people who love being close to the beach. This is a very, very good destination then. So when you start prospecting, you need to indicate to me, where will you find your customers? A, who might be potential customers, and B, where will I find them? Your pre-approach. Once you have now prospected and you've got leads, you're now qualifying those leads. You want to, in the pre-approach, prepare those leads, phoning them, qualifying them by asking them the correct questions to indicate, or that would indicate that they are ready to purchase, or that they are in the market for property. Okay, and that they, at this point, we're not even qualifying them financially yet. Okay, that's just in this. Nobody's going to say, okay, right, sir, I'm great to hear that you're interested in buying a house. Just send me through your last 2 payslips. I'll give you a sort of an indication what kind of property you would qualify to purchase. You're not doing that right at that point. That's what happens when you actually get to step number 4. When you're doing the presentation and you're asking the questions about what they thought of what you offered them, they will have to, and usually a good salesperson in real estate would have a top of the range product, a middle of the range product, and a cheaper option, or a variety of all 3 of those, but all 3 of those will be included. You will show the customer, and the customer in the presentation, you haven't seen a house yet, right? You haven't seen a house yet. That's the next step. You would do a presentation to them and said, listen, these are the houses available. I've got about 10 houses available. And then they're in the office when you're doing the presentation. And if now during COVID, it was probably done online. You show them links to online 360 videos to the properties that they're interested in. Once you've done that presentation, you ask them questions. They would say, hey, what, we can take number 3 and number 7 and number 9 out of the equation. That's too expensive. It's not. You haven't done anything of that, and you don't have to do the research on the affordability. When it comes to buying property, customers will tell you what they can afford or not, because customers sometimes think that customers sometimes, when they in the next step visit the property that has now been shortlisted, because then you're doing the next part of the presentation. Presentation is a longer, extended process when you're selling property, for instance, because once you've done the office visit and you've gone through all the different lists and you send them and they said, "Person, I want to see these 5 houses." Then you go, then you actually visit those 5 properties. They walk through it and they say, "Oh, no, in the pictures this showed this is much bigger than I actually thought." And then they start relooking their own budget. Very often when it comes to buying houses, the budget issue is not for you as a estate agent to qualify the prospect with, because they sort of decide what is affordable to them or not. When it goes to obviously, and you have no say in the matter, that's why you don't get involved in the matter, because once they have chosen the house that they would love to buy, the approval of the finances is not going to be done by you. It's going to be done by financial institutions, by banks, who's going to give them a bond to pay for the house. So, unfortunately, part of your job is to be well connected, so you can refer them to different options. And specific individuals at the different financial institutions that can help fast track the process. But at the end of the day, you don't get involved with this. That final trial close is where you determine, usually it's between 1 or 2 houses. When I bought my current house just before hard lockdown started last year, March. The whole process started in November November 2019, basically. And it took us 3 weeks basically to see all the places that we wanted to see. But I got down to 3. And I went to all 3 of those places. I went to them separately with my wife because sometimes when you're in each other's presence, you influence each other. And I made my choice. And then she went to see it the same day, just later. Again, also our working hours were not exactly the same that day. She also came up with her selection. It ended up being exactly the same one, but for different reasons. And it wasn't the cheapest and it wasn't the most expensive one. But I think, again, when that's your trial close period, when you get to that point where the customer now makes the decision or are given the decision A or B, you guide them towards that. You look at the different objections that they might have. For A, this is where, remember when we have the different types of objections, it could be that they're not interested, it could be that you play that advantage, disadvantage, benefits game to determine which property is better if you use the same criteria and apply to both. You do your final presentation. You close the deal. Closing the deal means, okay, you've decided this is the house. Now we have to put in an offer. If you are not paying the full price, to the seller. If the seller accepts that, we finish the paperwork. It goes off to the bank to approve your bond. Once that happens, next and final step is done. The transaction is concluded. Sale is finished. Paperwork goes off to the deeds office, and the property needs to be signed or needs to be registered in the new owner's name. You follow up with the customer because usually you cannot move in until the deeds office have not registered the property in your name. I'm currently have a vacancy right next to me. The people have moved out already at the end of last month. The new people moving in who bought the place are still started in the process of finalizing their sale, and they can't move out of their previous house and move into this, otherwise they'll be paying 2 bonds basically. The long and the short of it is, when you follow up, it's follow up after the sale, see if that process is completed. We find out if it's taking longer than a certain period of time, because it's usually taking 4 to 6 weeks to have this completed at the deeds office, and then handing over the keys. That's basically where everything finishes. That usually is part of the final closure, step number 9 in most cases. But when it comes to property, it's slightly different, because you only move in once that registration is been completed. Okay. So that's the kind of application I required from this particular question. And in some cases, I think people were slightly troubled in knowing exactly how to apply it. I did take into consideration the fact that you are probably not property owners, haven't gone through this process as a potential buyer, and therefore might have limited knowledge. Again, an assignment requires, if you have limited knowledge on a subject, to do research. But that's the kind of question or kind of answer I expected from question 2.1. Right, question 1.3, not question 3, as it says there on the screen. I wanted you to do some research. COVID hit us. Now we know, and we've done in 1.2 and 1.1 and 1.2, the steps in the selling cycle. How does the sales process, how has it been affected as a result of COVID? Do we still follow the same 10 steps as we have listed in question 1.1? Are there some steps that we skip now? Are there some steps that has now been removed from that process? Are there some steps that we now do differently? That's basically what I wanted. And then also, in general, what would you do differently in the current situation, or if you were a salesperson that went through the COVID pandemic, and how it impacted on your way of performing your sales function? Now, some of the points that came out, and I've listed at the bottom the 2 websites that I have used just to gather some information, to get a sort of a idea of what was going on, and also to include some of them in the memo, and not everything, because and in this case, this is just guidelines. It's not, if you didn't have any of those that's on the screen in your answer, it's incorrect. No, we were looking for relevant information and relevant answers that indicate how you can or had to adapt the process, the selling process. The one thing that needed to be the same, is that you have to still keep discipline. You still have to work the 10 steps. Yes, some of the steps you have to modify, but you still have to do it. You still have to repeat the process the whole time. You can't, or people still need houses, regardless if we're in a pandemic or not. Some people were forced to sell their houses because of losing their jobs or whatever. They need a different house. They need a smaller house. They need to maybe rent now and not buy. Property will always be bought and sold, regardless of where the economy stands. The different sectors of the market, prices or in more expensive ranges would probably not do as well in tough times like now, but people still buy houses. It's this fact. Probably the one aspect in this particular industry of selling real estate that was most affected by the pandemic was the process of registering property, because there were limited staff, initially no staff at the deeds office, and then later on limited staff. So if the same number of properties were sold, it took longer to register. That sort of has balanced out, and at the moment we're doing quite well. And well, for a large portion of, I think for the majority of this year, this industry has done well. But people will always be in the market to buy a house, regardless. When I was just starting out working, I was renting property, and I thought, you know what, I'll never be able to own a house. And there are people who go through their lives never owning property, who just say, I'm going to rent forever, which is fine. You can rent forever. My sister's husband, his father he lived to the age of 70, and dentist, head of the dentistry faculty at Stellenbosch University. He had all the means to buy property. He just never bought a house. And there are people who have that approach or that philosophy. Property will always there's always a buyer and a seller for each house. And there will always be, regardless of economic times. Don't get negative. Surround yourself with people who are positive. These kind of things we all know, and these are very generic things that we had to continue to do for us to get through the difficult time. I've just said that there will always be houses to be sold and houses to be bought. Point second from the bottom, do not panic. Don't stop selling. There will always be people looking for places. Get creative. Dwayne, how you unfortunately, I think this is one of the industries that were least affected when it came to showing people what's available. The only challenge initially, because they were already into virtual tours and stuff like that. I think the only challenge for them was getting into new property, because they couldn't get into the property during certain phases of lockdown to take the video. But again, you can ask the owner of the property, if he's serious in selling, to take a video and to send it to you, and upload it and send it to you, because then you can share it with because usually in normal circumstances, the estate agent would take that video and upload it onto their site. But again, be creative. Let the customer take the video and show it to you, send it to you. Right, I think I'm going to finish with question 2 today, and then we can do the rest tomorrow. Question 2, name and describe 4 prospecting sources. Now, I had some varying results here when I started marketing. People revisit pages 108 to 101 to 108 in your textbooks again. It's quite clear, and all the variety that you see here is included. You will get 1 mark for listing, naming the particular prospecting source or method, and then also you got an additional 2 marks for explaining it to me, describing what it is. What do satisfied customers mean? Okay, satisfied customers were one of the categories, one of the methods that we can use and apply to find new prospects, because that's basically what prospecting sources and methods mean. What methods am I going to use? What sources am I going to use to find new customers? Well, one way is to start with customers who are satisfied. Phone them. They're happy. They're already a client with you, and they're satisfied. Ask them if they maybe know people who, ask them if they might be in the market to buy or upgrade or whatever, or downscale. Ask them if they can maybe list people that they can refer, or name people that they can refer to you. Endless chain technique. Obviously, a very popular technique that's used for any type of product or service. You're getting the names and friends or acquaintances from customers. Even if the customer says, no, I'm not interested in buying a house now, then you ask them, can you maybe give me a name of one or two people you do? You might know that want to buy a house at this stage, or some of your friends who you know are looking for property at the moment. Center of influence, that's where you align with somebody that is popular in a particular community, or who's maybe somebody who's known nationally. Link them to a particular to your business. Use them in some of your promotions. They don't have to necessarily spend a lot of money on obtaining people like this, but I think in property it's more a case of finding people in a particular community that that's known to people in that community and that they respect and they look up to. Maybe it's a lawyer or accountant or somebody in that area that that you can easily, people they're popular with the people in that community, and if that person are used or linked to your company to draw people or new prospects to you, then that's what you do. You also have networking. Make sure that people that you you never close a case. It's almost like an unsolved mystery or crime. That file always stays open. You always need your existing prospects, your satisfied customers, and people in very specific businesses. You know, for instance, part of your networking, if you're networking, or part of your network in real estate, buying and selling houses, would be to have teachers or school principals as part of your network, because they are the people who know whose kids are coming to that school next year, especially the grade 1s if it's a primary school, especially grade 8 if it's a high school. People will move to be closer to a school. If they know the kids are going to a new school in a new area, if you can get access to that as part of your network via a teacher or somebody in a position that are prepared to share some of the information with you, because for the POPI Act, you can't just give somebody the names. These are the new parents for next year. Go have a ball. That's not going to happen. Okay. But I was at my primary school, when my kids were in primary school, my neighbor was was the principal. And we often started chatting over the back wall when he was fiddling around in the garden and I was fiddling in my garden. And one of the things that happened is that he expressed to me one day that he's struggling to find certain coaches. I said to him, you know what? I train coaches. So I can give you a couple of students who need to do their internship, and they can. So that's what networking is, to be alert all the time and keep important people in your network that will that will open certain doors for you. Internet, people search that during hard lockdown. There's websites that give you information on companies and who their board of directors are, who their staff members are, how long they've been in business, what type of business they're in, what new developments they're in. If you know that there's a new development happening in a certain area, then you know people are going to move there because people are going to work there and people are going to need houses there. If there's a new development going up, then you know those houses need to be sold by somebody. So again, people all the time search. That's why we have the wonderful tool of Google. Advertise, direct mail, catalogs. You see a lot of these real estate agents or companies present sometimes during a very busy time of day, early morning, school drop-off, pick up of school afterwards at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on certain corners close to the school. They've got a couple of vehicles, they've got a couple of banners up there, people handing out information as the traffic is congested and traffic moves slowly, so they can give you a brochure quickly. Continue doing that. Attend exhibitions, very important. Design for living, outdoor expos, all these all these exhibitions are very valuable for people who are trying to find new prospects who want to buy a house, because that's what this question is about. Lists, directories, not so more nowadays because of the POPI Act. Data mining and is very important. Using information that you have that's available to you on your existing customers. Cold calling, not as much so nowadays with the POPI Act. You are permitted to still call people, but you can only call them if you can offer them something similar to what they currently have, and you can't call them again afterwards. You've got one shot at it. Okay, but people make sure that house to house selling, direct phone calling people, taking in the old days a phone directory and just from the top phone people and that's it happened, people. Desperate times requires creativity. Okay, so that's what that's what we have to do. Telemarketing, not so much nowadays with the POPI Act, but telemarketing is an option. Join a direct selling network. It helps. You find nowadays that estate agents also are resident agents. They stay in a particular area where they are operating, so they live there, so they can tell people what's happening in that area, and they can do it from own experience and not they've heard that this is a safe area. They know it's a safe area because they live in that same area. Final part for 6 marks. Again, question 2.2. We wanted you to do some research and then also identify 6 ways that prospects to prospect effectively during COVID. There's a whole range on there, and a lot of them. Any of the ones that you've answered in 2.1 could qualify, and just slightly modify it, but qualify it. You have to. You can't just disappear and say, "Oh, geez, I'm going to hide under a rock because I don't want to get the virus." You have to still remain visible. You have to expand your digital presence. Start working smarter, not harder. Update your social profile or media profile. That's very important. Okay, go through your old files. This is an opportunity now because you don't have so many walk-in clients, especially during the early stages of lockdown. That's where you actually can now go through your old files and phone. And if some people are not alive anymore, or some people have retired and in an old age home, they're definitely not in the market anymore, then update those files, people. Okay, at the bottom, I've also included again 2 websites that I've used that you can actually access again. That was part of your requirement to also then list the references. You didn't have to list it in the question, but you had to include whatever research you did. Remember, the question says do desktop research. That means go onto the website and find information there, because you won't find this in your textbook. Then those resources, like I have at the bottom of the screen, need to be in your list of references, your bibliography at the end of the assignment. Okay, that's what I'm going to do today. I'm not going to go beyond this. You need an extra 5 minutes discount because you're tired and you have a lot of other things to do. I will resume with the discussion of the assignment, and then also we'll attend to the term test in the same manner when we have class again tomorrow. Tomorrow. No, I hate that song, as a matter of fact. Let me just check and see if 100% correct. Tomorrow, Thursday, we will have class the 3rd period, 9:35, and again the 5th period. Okay, if everything goes well, I will chat to you again tomorrow. Anybody, any questions at this point? Are you all good? Luanda, you fine? You good? Talking, you fine? You're alive? You're awake? Right.
Yes, very good. I typed it in the comments.
I'm going to scroll down. I haven't gone all. Oh, there we go. I've got all the way down. Talking is good. And thanks for attending. You sound very tired. Maybe this is a good time for you just to go do a quick power nap. Everybody, stay safe. Keep well. Take care of yourselves. And we'll chat again tomorrow, third period, 9:35. Have a great afternoon. Thanks, everybody.